Array formulas, also called matrix formulas, have been around in Excel for a long time. But what exactly is an array? An array is a range that contains data. The smallest array is therefore a cell. Larger arrays can consist of single rows or columns, or even a combination of several rows and columns. With array formulas, you use a formula to calculate an entire range at once. So instead of referring to individual cells in a formula and then transferring that formula to other cells, as you did before, you now refer to ranges in a cell, and Excel will then calculate all the results at once after you confirm and enter them in individual cells. Handy, isn't it? Now, many who have worked with array formulas before will ask what exactly is supposed to be new about this. Well, until now, you had to select the entire result range before you entered the array formula and then completed it with the keyboard shortcut Control, Shift, and Enter. This automatically enclosed the entire entry in curly brackets, and only then did Excel calculate the selected range. This was a static range that also had to be selected beforehand again when making changes to the formula and then completed again with Control, Shift, and Enter. The fact that you no longer have to select the entire result area beforehand and can only confirm the calculation or changes with Enter is already a great relief in terms of work. But that's not all there is to dynamic array formulas. With an array formula, you fill a flexible range with results. So, you don't need to know beforehand how extensive the result will be, you just leave that to Excel. An important point when working with these new functions is that you can always work with the original data. The use of copies is omitted. I would now like to give you a few ideas for when you can use these new array formulas. For example, you can create a data extract from a large table that always remains up to date without having to manually adjust it when changes or additions are made to the original table. It is not always desired or possible to sort tables in the original. Instead, you are now able to output a sorted table in a different location. For example, you can search in your data for customers who have only bought something once so far. Now, a few important points. All cells that are calculated by an array formula must be empty. As soon as there is something in one of the cells, you will get an error message called overflow. This prevents content that may be important to you from being overwritten. Areas that you want to evaluate should be formatted as a table beforehand. However, dynamic array formulas are not supported in these smart tables. It is best to place your array formulas 1 or 2 columns apart next to the tables. So, enough of the preface. The journey into the world of dynamic arrays begins now. With the function VLOOKUP, you can combine information from 2 tables. However, the function has some limitations. For example, you can only return values that are to the right of the search criteria in the matrix. So, if you cannot change the order of the columns, at least until now, the only way was to combine the functions index and match. With the new function XLOOKUP, you can now flexibly find content to the left or right of the search criteria and also have several pieces of information transferred to different columns at once. But the function can do even more, and that is what I want to show you now. I hope I made you curious. Well then, let's go. Now please open the workbook XLOOKUP. You will see the 2 worksheets, Orders and Studios. On the sheet Orders, some orders are summarized, in each case with the invoice date and the associated revenue. The sheet Studios contains the addresses and the contact people of the respective sports studios. So far, so good. Actually, this is a clear case for the VLOOKUP, right? Now please take a closer look at the structure of the studios table. You can see here that the customer number of the studio, which you can use to create a unique assignment, is in the last column of the table, and all the required information is to the left of it. This is a pity because the VLOOKUP function is no longer a good option. Sure, you could now change the order of the columns so that it fits again, but you don't have to do that. You can use the XLOOKUP function here instead. Now please switch to the spreadsheet Orders and click into cell B2. Okay, and here you insert an equal sign and then write XLOOKUP. Capitalization does not matter here. As soon as you have written the first letters, the selection of functions is narrowed down and you can double-click the XLOOKUP with the left mouse button. Now the function name will be completely transferred to the cell and you will see the individual arguments below it. Then click here on the top of the editing line on the symbol FX to open the dialog box of the function arguments. 3 arguments are in bold, which means that these rows must be filled in, while the last 3 arguments are optional. The lookup value corresponds to the first client number in this table. In other words, the content of cell A2. The lookup array is located on the Studios worksheet. Please click on it now and select here only the cells G2 to G13. In the row Return Array, you must now enter where Excel will find the content that you will have added to the sheet order. Attention! After you have clicked into the row, the calculator jumps back to the other worksheet. So, you click again on Studios and select here the cells B2 to F13. Please fill in the line if not found as well. How about, for example, no Acme Sports Studio? If this line remains empty and no match is found, the standard error message #NV is displayed instead. The match mode can contain 4 different entries, where the 0 stands for the exact match here. Since this is the default setting in this function, you do not need to fill in this line because it is exactly what is needed here. If you enter a 1 or -1 instead, the next larger or next smaller element will be returned if there is no exact match. With the last argument regarding the search mode, you can define where the search starts at the first or last element. In other words, search from top to bottom or from bottom to top. If you leave this line empty, the search will be from top to bottom. Before you finish the function with OK, please click here on the bottom left on the link Help for this function. This will start the browser and you can have another look at the meaning of all arguments. I will now close the browser window and confirm the function with OK. In contrast to the VLOOKUP, you have entered the formula in 1 cell, but 5 cells have been filled automatically. In cells C2 to F2, the formula is grayed out. You can see it, but you cannot change it. This is because you created the formula in cell B2, and the result then overflowed into the other cells. No matter in which cell you now look at the formula, it is always the same. Before you continue filling in the formula in column B, you should define the absolute references for the search and return matrices. To do this, click in cell B2 and select both matrices. Start with the selection at G2 and release the mouse at F13. If you press F4 once, all references will be completely filled with $signs. Now confirm the change and then please drag the formula to cell B49. Again, you have only filled in the first cell and the other content has automatically overflowed into the other cells in the respective row. In row 34, you can also see that the customer number 5 does not exist in the customer table because it says no Acme Sports Studio, which is exactly what you specified earlier in the row, if not found. That's a huge workload saver, isn't it? Briefly summarized, the search criteria is a cell, as in many other functions. The search matrix is independent of the return matrix. You can define the 2 matrices not only at different positions on a worksheet, but even create them on different worksheets. The only important thing is that both matrices contain the same number of rows. Due to the new return matrix, you can now fill several cells at once. If a value is not contained in the search matrix, you can have the error message #NV immediately replaced by different content if you enter it in the line if not found. By default, the exact match is always searched for and the search direction is from top to bottom. If you receive an error message called spill when using the function, you do not have enough space for the content of the return matrix. This means nothing else than that there are too few empty cells in the table where the information is being entered. In this case, check the size of the return matrix, for example, or insert an empty column in your results table. You cannot use the function in a smart table, that is, a range that you have formatted as a table. I am sure you will quickly see the advantages of this function over the VLOOKUP that you have often used in the past, and you will be able to put it to good use. Let me conclude with a small practical example to give you another idea of how you can use this function sensibly. Imagine you are looking for additional information on article numbers. However, in the corresponding table, in other words the matrix, there are many other columns between the search criteria and the column with the required information. In contrast to the VLOOKUP, you now only need to select the two relevant columns. This also significantly increases performance because the huge matrix is no longer loaded for each cell, but only two columns. If you work with tables in Excel, you are surely familiar with filtering data according to various criteria. This is good as long as you filter the values in place. However, if you want to continue working with the filter result, in the past, you have probably copied the results and then pasted them into another spreadsheet or workbook. However, since a copy is always static data, it will then not be updated anymore. With the new filter function, you can not only have the data records output at a different location, but the data also retains the reference to the initial values. You can now create data extracts that are automatically updated. The second new function I would like to introduce is called Unique. And as the name implies, it enables you to pick out the unique values from a list or a range. So, you can quickly and easily create drop-down fields with automatically integrated selection options. Curious now? Then here we go. Please open the Filter and Unique workbook. On the Sports Equipment worksheet, the sales table lists the sales figures per employee. Additionally, you can see the corresponding item, the product category, and the employee's location. I have deactivated the filter buttons because I want to use the filter function instead. To the right of the table, you can see some prepared areas where the results are to be entered. First, I want to list all records that were obtained at the Houston location. To do this, please first click in the cell H6, enter an equal sign, and then start typing the word filter. Choose the function filter with a double click and then open the function arguments box via FX here on the top left. The array includes cells A2 to E51, shown here as sales. Under Include, enter the range where the filter criteria is to be found, including the comparison and the criteria. Please mark the range E2 to E51. The entry Sales, in square brackets location, is now displayed instead of the cell reference. The comparison operator is an equal sign and is followed by the actual criteria, which is here in cell I3. The last argument, if empty, is optional, easily recognizable by the fact that it is not printed in bold. Leave this line empty for now and confirm the entries with OK. You now get a result that consists of 5 rows. In cell H6, you have entered one formula and 25 cells have been filled automatically. If you now change the location in cell E3 from Buffalo to Houston, the result is immediately supplemented by another row. This automatic filling of cells is also called spilling. The formula in the first cell can be edited. All other formulas are grayed out, so they cannot be changed. At this point, please pause this video for a moment and create a formula in cell H16 with which you can filter all sales of the employee Brown. And did it work? You can see the formula in this cell here. And again, if you change or add to the sales table, the result will also be dynamically adjusted. So, please insert a new record starting from cell A52. The employee is Brown and the item is treadmill from the endurance group. There is a revenue of $3,500 at the location Los Angeles. Immediately, the filter result is added here as well. In the next section, two criteria are now to be combined. In other words, only the sales that the employee Brown has achieved in Houston are to be output here. You start in cell H31 again with the filter function and then open the dialog box of the function arguments here above via fx. The array again corresponds to the sales table. Then please put the first criteria, sales, in brackets location, equals I-27 in brackets. To link both criteria, you must now multiply the first criteria by the second. Sales employees equals I-28. And then close the function again with OK. The result of the AND operation consists of two lines. However, if you want to have all records displayed where either the employee Brown generated the sales or sales that were generated in Houston, then you also have to link the criteria. But now use a plus sign instead of the asterisk. I'll show it again briefly here. Equals filter, sales, first criteria in parentheses, plus second criteria in parentheses, and OK. Now 13 lines were output right away, with only one formula. So, creating always up-to-date data extracts is fast and easy, isn't it? Now I would like to talk about the optional argument if empty. Please click once in cell I3, currently filled with the entry Houston. You can always filter for another location, for example, Kansas City. That this works is not really surprising. However, if you make a typing error or enter a location that does not exist in the sales table, for example, Cleveland, you will receive a new error message, calc, ! In the information about this error, you will find the reference to an empty array. This means that Excel does not find this value in the comparison array, in other words, the column you want to search. To work around this problem, complete the formula in cell H6 and enter, for example, no valid location in the last row. After confirming with OK, the error message will be replaced by your text, and you will immediately see why no records are output. Even if the argument if empty is only optional, I recommend you fill it out because you can avoid error messages with it. Now I would like to introduce you to another function that is often used for the filter criteria, and that is the drop-down lists. With this, you can make sure that only those sites are allowed to be selected that are listed in the sales table. Maybe you are already using the Remove Duplicates tool for this. So, you copy all the locations to another worksheet, remove the duplicates, and then refer to the Locations section to create a drop-down list. And as locations are added, you add the list and still change the source if necessary. This is a way that works well but is somewhat error-prone. It happens from time to time that at one or the other place, the update is forgotten. With the unique function, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Sounds interesting? Then I will now show you what the function can do. Please change to the second worksheet, Evaluations. Here I have already entered the headings for the locations and employees. Starting from cell A2, all locations are to be listed, and each one only once because this enumeration is to be the source for the drop-down list. So please write an equal sign and the word unique in cell A2. Apply with a double click and then click on the Sports Equipment worksheet. Here you mark the lines E2 to E52 and confirm with Enter. Now all locations are listed once. This works here without any problems because all cells into which the array formula was spilled were empty. But what happens if this is not the case? Just test it. Click on a location and write something in the cell, for example a 5, and then confirm the change with Enter. Not only the one location will be removed from the list, but all of them and the error message spill will be displayed. In the information area, which you can open here above via the yellow hash, you can read that the spill area is not empty. So, content is not simply overwritten, but you have to decide if the formula should be moved to another position or if you can remove the content, as in this case. As soon as there is enough space again, the original list is restored. To finally create a dynamic drop-down list, I would like to show you another new feature. Please click once in cell B2 and create a reference to cell A2. If you confirm this again with Enter, the same entry will appear here as in A2, as far as known. However, if you now place a hash behind the reference A2 and confirm again, not only the first cell will be filled, but all rows. With the hash, a dynamic array is marked, whose beginning is in this case in cell A2. You can delete the entries in column B again. Now switch to the Sports Equipment worksheet, click in cell I3, navigate to the Data tab, and then open the Data Validation. A list is to be displayed whose source is on the Evaluations worksheet. Click here on cell A2, set the hash behind it, and confirm with OK. And then test the drop-down list. All cities that are contained in the sales table are displayed in the selection. If you now change a location, for example, in cell E4 from Boston to Miami, this entry will automatically be added to the drop-down list. Now practice the unique function a bit and create a list of all employees on the evaluations worksheet. Define the result as the source of the data check in cell I13. And did it work? Then you also have the choice for which employees the sales are displayed. With the function unique, you can not only have each entry entered once in a new area, but you can also use it to pick out the locations to which only one order has been delivered so far. To find this information, you start in the worksheet Evaluations in cell E2 again with the function unique. The array is again the column of locations in the sales table, and if you now enter the value true into the last argument named exactly once and conclude the formula with OK, you will get an overview of 3 locations. So, the unique function is not only useful for creating a dynamic source for a drop-down list, but you can also use it to search specifically for information in a table that does not appear only once. Maybe there is an item that was sold only once? Please create a formula here on the evaluations worksheet to answer this question. And what was the result? Correct! The cross trainer has only been sold once so far. Here you can also find the heading Who Sells What? To answer this question, you need to combine the information from 2 columns. You start, as usual, in the worksheet Evaluations here in the cell I2 with the function unique. Now the array is composed of the columns Employees and Items from the sales table, which you can select together here. After confirming with OK, the result, which consists of 30 rows, is created immediately. The second argument of the function byColumn is used whenever you want to search for a range of unique values column by column rather than row by row. In the Unique from Row worksheet, I've put all the entries in the Product Group column in one row. Below that, I want each value to be displayed only once. You start in cell A4 with the function unique and open the function wizard here via fx. In this case, the array is the first row, in other words, cells A1 to AX1. In the second row, please enter the value true. This means that the function should now search for unique entries in one row. If you confirm the function with OK, each product group will be entered once in cells A4 to E4. With the function unique, you are able to extract values from columns or rows of your table in a simple way and output them in another place. You can use the results as a source for drop-down lists, for example. In the source, always refer to the first result cell only and add the hash to the entry because this will always refer to all results of the unique function. Use the filter function to create a data extract if you do not always need to evaluate all the data in the table. You can place the results in another worksheet or workbook. For both functions, make sure that the cells that Excel needs to output the results are empty. If they are not, you will get the error message spill. Both functions belong to the dynamic array functions, which means that the results are always updated automatically. Microsoft has introduced dynamic array functions in Excel, including the functions sort and SORTBY. Both options have been available since the early days of Excel, and sorting itself is really nothing new anymore. However, there is an important difference between the new functions and the previous variant. While you sorted a table on the spot with the previous method, you can now output the sort result at a different place. The advantage over the previous way of working is that the lists are automatically sorted and, if necessary, supplemented when data is added or changed in the output table. I would like to show you two possible applications here. You are working on a table together with several people, for example. Each of you has different priorities and sorts the table according to his or her personal ideas. So, every time you want to work with the table, you have to sort it again according to your own ideas. Now you can leave the table unsorted and set up a separate spreadsheet for each person so that everyone can output a sorted table according to their requirements on their own spreadsheet and perform the desired analyses. In another case, you need to analyze the data daily according to different points of view, so you have to repeatedly sort the data and the table according to changing criteria. Here, too, use the new functions to display the sorting results in different spreadsheets. This way, you can always access the required sorting without having to recreate it every time. How this works exactly, I would like to show you now. Please open the workbook Sort and Sort By. In the sales table on the sports equipment worksheet, the sales of the various employees were entered, broken down by item, product category, and by location. The other worksheets are still empty, except for the headings. Please click on cell A2 in the worksheet, Employee, and enter Equal Sort. With the double click, you can then assign the function to your cell. Now, please open the Function Arguments dialog box via FX and fill in the arguments. The array is the table sales. Now, you could select all records from the sports equipment worksheet, but a better alternative is to simply enter the name of the table. The result is the same. Then click OK, and the result is a table alphabetically sorted by employees. To test whether the result is really sorted automatically, please change an employee name on the sports equipment worksheet, for example, to Anderson. And if you now take a look at the employees worksheet, you can see this worked well here. On the items worksheet, the sales table should be the output sorted by the second column. So, again, click in cell A2 and enter Equal Sort. Then open the dialog box of the function arguments, and in the first row, Array, you can again enter Sales. In the second line, Sort Index, you can now specify the column to be used for sorting. In this case, you want to sort by the items that are in the second column. If you do not fill in this line, the sorting will always be done by the first column. Click OK, and the table will be displayed in the desired sort order. In the third worksheet, Locations, the result is to be displayed in descending order. Again, start in cell A2, enter the function, and fill in the first argument, the array, right away. The sort index here is the number 5. You can define the sort order in the third row, a 1 for ascending order, and a -1 for descending order. Now please enter the value here and confirm below with OK. And as you see, you get a descending sorted result. There is a second function for sorting, namely SORTBY, and I would like to show you how to use this function on the worksheet Employee Sales. You can start entering equal sort in cell A2 again, but this time please select the second entry from the suggestion list by double-clicking on it. Open the function wizard, and now the dialog box looks different. You now have to fill in the 2 mandatory arguments named array and by array1. The array is the sales table. In the second row by array1, you can enter which column should be sorted first. In this case, it is the names of the employees. Please select this column on the sports equipment worksheet. As soon as you have clicked into the second argument, something else happens. Now a third, so far hidden, argument is displayed. With sort order 1, you can determine whether the employees should be sorted in ascending or descending order. Possible entries are, again, 1 for ascending sorting and -1 for descending sorting. After clicking into this argument, another line will be displayed where you can define by which column you want your data to be sorted afterwards. Here it is, the sales column. Now select this column on the sports equipment worksheet. Matching the argument by array 2, the argument sort order 2 is then also displayed. You can continue this up to array 126. Which means nothing other than that you can have tables sorted by up to 126 columns. Okay, back to the current sort. If you now finish the function by clicking OK, you will get the error message that you have entered too few arguments for this function. But why? You have filled in all the required rows, right? Please take a closer look at the formula here at the top. All the arguments are separated by a comma, but there is a second comma after the first sort column. This was set automatically by Excel, just like the others, to separate the arguments from each other. If now an optional argument, here in this case the sort order 1, is not filled in, then only a comma is inserted into the formula. However, since the present formula was terminated without filling in the last argument, Excel completely closes the formula without first setting the comma for a missing argument. Now first close the error message and correct the formula as follows. Add the missing comma here at the top. Inserted directly before the closing parentheses, it then serves its purpose as a placeholder. If you confirm the change with Enter, a double sorted list will be output immediately. First, it was sorted by the employee names and then by the respective sales. So, this sorting also worked wonderfully. At this point, I would like to give you a little tip. Fill in all arguments, also the optional ones, so you avoid the error message and the reworking of the formula. You can also combine different functions with a sort function. For example, let's say you get an alphabetically sorted list of all locations, which you can use as a basis for drop-down lists. Or you can have the result of a filter sorted and thus immediately know which employee has achieved the most sales in Houston. The structure of combined functions always follows the same principle, from the outside in. This means that you start with the function that is executed last and only then use the functions unique or filter. Let me show you using the 2 examples I just mentioned. On the worksheet, Unique Location Sorted, you start in cell A2 with the function sort. The array comes from the result of the unique function, so write down the function name followed by a pair of parentheses in this row. Now click on the word unique here at the top of the edit row and you will see the arguments for this function. The array is the column of locations in the sales table on the sports equipment worksheet. No further entries are necessary for an ascending sorted listing of all locations, and you can end the function directly with enter. That was quick, wasn't it? Even though you don't always have to sort the result of the unique function, it is recommended to do so if you want to use this as a source for a drop-down list. On the worksheet Sales Houston Sorted, you are to nest the sort and filter functions. Start here in cell A4 with the sort function. In the array, please enter that the column of locations in the sales table should be filtered by the criteria Houston, found here in cell B1. I will now show you again step by step. Now click on the word sort again in the edit line to switch back to the function arguments of this function. Here you still have to specify that the result should be sorted in ascending order according to the sales. Enter a 4 in the sort index line and close the function with enter. And voila! The result is not only filtered, but also sorted at the same time. With the sort and sort by functions, you have two powerful ways to automatically create sorted lists. The original table is only the source for all sorted overviews. It is best to place the results on separate spreadsheets, which you should name to match the result. This way, you ensure quick and direct access to the sort you need for completing the current task at hand. The 6 array functions provided by Microsoft also include the functions sequence and RANDARRAY. The sequence function is a quick and easy way to generate ranges of numbers where you can specify the size of the range, the starting value, and the step size. The result could look like this, for example. A series of consecutive numbers spanning 6 rows and 5 columns. This type of sequence can be used, for example, as a numbering system for lockers. Another possible application is automatic numbering of records. The second function I would like to introduce you to in this video is the RANDARRAY. This can be used to create areas that are filled with randomly selected numbers. Here you can see a possible result. A range of 6 rows and 5 columns containing integers in the range 1 to 100. This function is often used in test series, for example. Now I would like to show you how to use both functions. For example, generate a random collection of a group of customers that you want to invite to a survey or to whom you want to give new products for testing. Please open the workbook Sequence RANDARRAY. In order to have these orders numbered automatically, I made some preparations and provided them here. Firstly, an order number column was added before the sales table. It is important that this column is not added to the sales table because the array functions cannot be applied in smart tables. Secondly, the rows function in cell M3 is now used to determine how long the sales table currently is. Now click in cell A2, enter the function sequence here, and then click above on the function wizard. It is mandatory to specify how many rows are to be filled in. This value corresponds to the number of rows in the sales table, which has already been determined in cell M3. Since you only need one column, the numbering should start at 1, and also the step size is 1. The other arguments do not need to be filled in by you. You must fill in these fields only if you need several columns or want to use other starting values or step sizes. If you now click on OK, the numbers from 1 to 50 are automatically entered in column A. If you now add a data record to the sales table, the numbering should continue by itself. Why don't you test this? Just remember that the sales table starts in column B. And was the test successful? As soon as you enter a name in cell B52 and confirm it with Enter or the Tab key, not only does the name appear in the cell, but the numbering is automatically continued in column A. Of course, you can also use the rows function in the sequence function instead of the cell reference M3. I will show you this in column H. If you want to check this, always remember that you cannot use the array functions in Smart Tables. So, leave at least one column blank. Okay, I'll delete the second numbering now, as it is not needed here. And if you need another numbering, go ahead. There is enough space on this Examples of Use worksheet. Now please create a range of 7 rows and 5 columns, starting at 20 and continuing in increments of 10. Perhaps you also need a selection of dates because a task must always be completed on a certain day in the week. Then the formula can look like this. As start, I have chosen the function today, so only future dates will be displayed. I'm sure you can think of other possible applications. Okay, back to the evaluation on the sports equipment worksheet. Here on the right-hand side, there should be a random selection of 5 orders that should be looked at again in more detail for checking. You should always enter 5 order numbers there, but then it's not really random. Why don't you use the RANDARRAY function for this purpose? This function has 5 arguments, none of which you have to fill in. The results would be one random number, which you can also get with the function of the same name. Start in cell J8 with the function. As soon as you have entered the first letters, you will see a reduced selection of all functions with the initial letter as usual. A double click on the middle entry is sufficient, and you can open the function wizard again here above via FX or the keyboard shortcut Shift plus F3. The number of lines is already predefined because 5 orders are to be checked. Either enter the number directly in the row or use the reference to cell M5 as the value is already stored there. The number of columns is 1, as is the minimum. The maximum results from the number of rows in the sales table. For this, you can use either the value from cell M3 or the function itself. The last argument determines whether you want decimal values or integers to be output. Since the order numbers are integers, the entry here must therefore be true. After confirming with OK, 5 arbitrary numbers will appear on the worksheet. Since the RANDARRAY function returns arbitrary results, it cannot be ruled out that numbers are output twice, although this is not useful for the current purpose. You can use the unique function, which you have already learned about, to include duplicate order numbers. Simply click in cell J8 and in the edit line directly behind the equal sign. Now write the word unique, press the Tab key once, put a closing bracket after the entire entry, and confirm everything with Enter. 5 new numbers will now be displayed, none of which is duplicated. And if you now still want an ascending order of the selected order numbers, add the function as well. The formula then looks like here above in the edit line. This is how quickly you can have arbitrary and, above all, unique values determined, which are also sorted. If you have taken the number of rows from cell M5 into the RANDARRAY function, then please change the value and more or less order numbers will be output accordingly. Okay, this worked wonderfully. If you need a different range, you can use the RANDARRAY function here on the Examples of Use worksheet with the different inputs for the arguments. Here, I also let the RANDARRAY function generate a range of 7 rows and 5 columns for comparison with the result of the sequence function in cell I2. Its minimum is 20, the maximum is 360, and integers are to be output. Both results are, of course, very different. Now please create a range of the same size for this data sequence with randomly selected dates. The minimum should be the current date, and the maximum the 31st of December of the current year. Please note that fixed dates are interpreted as text and must therefore always be enclosed in quotation marks. Now you get dates that are not subject to any particular pattern. You can use such a result, for example, to perform random samples at irregular intervals. Finally, I would like to add the missing information for the selected order numbers on the sports equipment worksheet. For this purpose, I'll use the function XLOOKUP. The lookup value is in cell J8. The lookup array starts in cell A2. Since the cells below are filled with a dynamic array formula, you can again access all entries if you put a hash behind them. The return array corresponds to the sales table. More entries are not necessary at this moment, and you can now end the formula with OK. Now the first row is automatically filled with all matching information from the sales table. Before you now transfer the formula to the other 4 cells, you should define the reference A2 as absolute, in other words, insert $signs. The easiest way to do this is to press the F4 key. OK. If you extend the formula onto rows that do not contain an order number, you will receive this error message, #NA. This means that no suitable value was found. Now please add a space to the argument if not found in cell K8. If you then transfer the formula to further cells, the result is perfect. Only rows will be filled for which there is an order number in column J. If you do not know the function XLOOKUP yet, I recommend you watch the corresponding video. You can use the results of the RANDARRAY function when you need to take random samples. This can be customer or article numbers as well as dates. I'm sure you can certainly think of other opportunities to use this function. With the sequence function, on the other hand, you build up a straight line series of values with which you can, for example, generate automatic numbering or also define the data for maintenance intervals. Combine the sequence and RANDARRAY functions with other dynamic array functions and supplement missing information, for example, with the XLOOKUP function. Always keep two important points in mind. The results are only output if all cells that are filled in as a dynamic array are empty. And second, keep in mind that the dynamic array functions cannot be used in smart tables. Next to such a table, leave at least one column empty before using any of the array functions.